Hey everyone, it's Phil. How are you tonight? Happy Tuesday. Hey, we're just about ready to get started. Tonight we're going to be talking about working with a buyer. If you could type in and say hello here. Hey Ernesto, how does it sound? How's the hey Fiddler, how are you? How's the audio? Everything coming through? Hey Renata. Hey Shanitha, how are you? Cool. Hey Letty, thank you for being here. Everyone able to hear me okay? Naomi, good to see you. Thank you. Hey Mary, how are you? Hello. We'll give it another minute and see if anybody jumps on the call. Looks like we have about 13 people tonight, so that's great. So tonight we're going to be talking about working with a buyer. A lot of information, actually. Hey Dion, how are you? Johnny, good to see you. Can't hear. All right. Anybody else having any problems with the audio, or is it coming through okay? Everyone able to hear me okay? All right, good. Glad you fixed that, Johnny. Awesome. All right, let's get going. As I mentioned, a lot of information, lot to go through. Sounds good, Naomi. And if you have questions, just type them in, and we'll answer them as we go. So let's kind of move that slide. We'll go through the agenda. So we're going to talk first about showing a home, right? Then we're going to move into doing the comps, right? Because your client has now asked you to submit an offer. We're going to talk about submitting the offer. We're going to go through the contract in some detail. We're then going to talk about the home inspection and negotiating the inspection, a little bit about the key buyer dates, the Dalton Wade buyer acknowledgement, the final walkthrough of the property, and then right before closing, you're going to ask your clients for reviews and referrals because you did a great job for them. All right, let's talk about showing a home. So, a lot of times, people think we're selling a home. Somebody's purchasing a home and we're selling it to them. That is not how this works at all. It's actually just the opposite. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Hey, Maureen, good to see you. Thank you for being here. We're just getting going. So, we're talking about working with a buyer. You're going to set up a schedule, of your showings, right? So your client, may have sent you, 3 properties they wanted to look at. You've added in 2 or 3 more to make a nice tour of 5 or 6 properties. You're going to have them all confirmed. No exception, 100%. Every single appointment has to be confirmed by that listing agent. There's no going into anybody's house without confirmation from the listing agent. That is unacceptable. We do not do that. Do not do that. That is called lazy, and it's actually potentially can lose your license. So every appointment confirmed, right? And then you're going to put those appointments in a route, in a logical order, right? So you're going to start at the first house. You probably tell your clients you're going to meet them there. You're going to get there early, right? And you're going to have the listing with you. You're going to give that to them. And then you're going to show them that house. All right, so now we're on to bullet number 3. So bullet number 3 is very important, and I bet nobody, kind of anticipates this, but what we're really doing is we're pointing out the bad. And the reason we want to point out the bad, and we're going to talk about the things that you need to make sure you show your client that they have as best an understanding of as possible. Why do we point out the bad? We point out the bad because if a property goes under agreement and then your client makes their escrow deposit, what happens next? What comes next in the process of them purchasing a home? Anybody know what comes next? Ernesto gets A+. It's the inspection, right? So the inspection, I don't want to say it happens 100% of the time, but it certainly happens 99% of the time. There's a home inspection. Now, remember, we're not home inspectors. That's not what we do, right? But what we don't want to have happen is we don't want the home inspector telling our client that the roof is shot, that the roof has 2 years of life left, and it might cost $10,000 to replace. And your client doesn't have $10,000. They're spending all their money to buy the house, their closing costs, their down payment on their loan. So they don't have those funds. And then the home inspector tells them it's a $10,000 bill that might be coming, in the next year or two, and they walk away on you. They back out because you didn't do a good job showing them the house, right? The other thing showing them the bad, right, does is it makes them trust you. There's agents out there that just they don't care about their client. Do not be like that. You're going to build your business on referrals and repeat business, right? It'll help you gain their trust. I mean, I had an agent tell me, that he was, he was working with another agent. This is before he got his license, when he was purchasing his home. And, they looked at 3 houses, and the agent said, which one do you want to buy? And he was like, none of them. And he dumped that guy. That guy was a pushy, not professional real estate agent. That isn't how this business works. We're here to help our clients. All right. So let's talk about that first one, the roof. So there's a couple of types of roofs that are prominent here in Florida. Asphalt shingle roofs, right? Does anybody know what are some signs of an asphalt shingle roof that's getting to the end of its useful life? What are some signs that asphalt shingle roof is getting to the end of its useful life? Who knows? All right, we've got a few people typing. Let's see what pops up. Color is off and it is missing the grit. Curling shingles. Hey, Derek, how are you? Thank you for that answer. Exactly. Color is off. What I call that is discoloration. The house is wearing discoloration. Thank you. Ernesto, can you help us out here? No se puede ver español. I don't speak Spanish, but Ernesto does. All right, so discoloration, curling shingles, missing shingles. The discoloration is caused by, as Maureen mentioned, missing the grit. The roof has worn unevenly, right? So that's a sign that that roof is getting to the end, right? So you want to make sure you take a look at that roof, point it out. Unfortunately, not. Sorry, nope, can't. I wish I could, but no, don't have a translator. Sorry, Letty. Thank you, Ernesto. All right, so onward. So asphalt shingle roofs tend to last 15, 18, maybe 20 years tops. So sometimes you can see, from when that roof was installed, about how much useful life is left, or visually. The other type of roof we run into are tile roofs. And an asphalt shingle roof typically costs about $8,000 to $10,000, maybe for a 2,000 square foot home. So they're not cheap. Tile roofs are more expensive. That same 2,000 square foot home, that tile roof might be $15,000 to $17,000. Now, on a tile roof, you cannot tell visually by looking at it what condition it is in. So then you have to go by the age, right? So they typically last 30 to 35 years. So So you're going to look on the listing. The listing's a house from 1989, and the listing agent hasn't mentioned anything about a new roof. It's probably the original roof. Probably has a little bit of time left, but not a lot. And that's what you'll mention to your, to your client. Now, again, it's perfectly fine to make an offer on a home that has an older roof, an older AC, right? Any of those things. But here's where the problem comes in, and it goes back to that home inspection. It goes back when the home inspector tells your client, or on his report it talks about the roof or the AC, and it tells them that the useful life there's not a lot of useful life left, and that is a surprise to your client. That's how your deals fall apart. I call it your deal blew up. It blew up because you didn't do a good job showing them the house, right? Especially first-time homebuyers, they're not going to do that, right? So that's the roof, right? So you're going to want to take a look, right? You want to teach your client how to look at a house. You're going to want to look at the AC, right? You're going to see, again, sometimes there's a tag. An AC system has two components. One is the compressor, one is the air handler. The home inspector is going to do a test to see how much, how much air, coming out of the system is, like how hard is it blowing, right? They have a test they do. Again, we don't have that equipment, so we're not going to be able to. You can go very far, Ernesto. You can tell them, again, it's all, we are not home inspectors. You are not making any claims. That's the home inspector's job, right? But again, if you want to, that's a good skill to have. So you certainly can, you can certainly comment. And a lot of times just visually, the thing looks old, rusty, junky. It's probably not got a lot of time left, right? The compressor is typically outside. That may be, ACs last 15 years, maybe a little longer. I just had an AC put in at my condominium probably about 10 months ago. New AC, new compressor, $7,700. They're not cheap, right? So, again, like we bought the place 4 years ago. We knew the thing was old. We knew it had some time, right? But we knew it was time to upgrade it. It had conked out on us once. And it was, they got it back going, and we kind of knew, okay, it's time to put a new one in. And that's the same thing, again, some people just, keep them till they die, and then they get a new one, right? If it's in the winter, that's not so bad. If it's in the dead of summer, that can be a problem. But again, it's so that your client is aware. These are the big ticket items. These are the things that, are expensive. Like I just mentioned, a new asphalt shingle roof, $10,000. New AC system, $7,700. New tile roof, $17,000. Sometimes buyers don't have that availability of those funds, and they walk away. Everything is to sort of get to the end, right? That's kind of how you're showing that house. Who knows what the 4-point inspection is? 4-point. Anybody know? 4-point. Anybody heard of that? 4-point. HVAC, roof, couple more, because it's 4 things that the home inspector is going to be generating a report. Exactly. Thank you. Yep. It's the roof, electric, plumbing, and AC. And it's 4 houses built before that are 30 years or more old. So anything before 1989 is going to require a 4-point inspection for the buyer to get insurance. Lead paint, no, lead paint is not part of the 4-point inspection. That is something different. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but actually tomorrow night in more detail. No, the 4-point, lead paint is not part of the 4-point. The 4-point is the roof. So the home inspector is going to look at the roof, the electric, the plumbing, and the AC, and he's going to pass it or fail it. If it passes, they get insurance. If it fails, something has to be fixed. Sometimes you can't. No, sorry. No worries, Maureen. So that's the 4-point. So if the house is, older than 30 years, there's a 4-point required for your buyer to get insurance. If your buyer can't get insurance, and they're getting a loan, they can't get that loan because the bank won't finance them unless they have insurance. The electrical panel, we talked about that as being part of, the 4-point inspection. You're going to look at the electrical panel. You're going to find the panel. You're going to look at the brand name. The brand names that are problematic are Federal, Pacific, Challenger, and Zinco. Those brands are uninsurable. They will flunk the 4-point. They were all put in more than 30 years ago. You can seem knowledgeable to your client and tell them this, right? Typically, the seller is going to have to swap them out. An electrical box on a smaller, like condominium, maybe $1,200, and on a larger home could be $2,000. So, meaning a larger box, 200 amps. So you're going to, the home inspector, he is going to unscrew the panel, right? He's going to take the cover off and look at the breakers. We don't do that. Now, the other thing you're looking for is, aluminum wiring, cloth wiring. Again, older homes tend to have maybe some issues. Obviously, if it has fuses, there's still homes out there, that are runoff fuses. Those are difficult to get insurance. So you want to look at that electrical panel. You're going to look at the windows, right? That 1989 house, those windows are all 30 years old. Very, very inefficient. That AC, the heat, the cool air is going right out the window, so to speak. There might be broken seals. You might even see jalousie windows, the old crank windows, all very, very not energy efficient, right? New replacement windows can be $400 to $500 each. House has 20 windows, that's $8 to $10 grand. Now, obviously, you can live there, but you're going to have very, very high electrical. So you want to your electrical cost is going to be much, much higher. So you want to take a look at those windows. Those are, again, the big ticket items. You want to be looking for termites. Again, we're not a termite inspector. Hey, Dominique, no worries. We're just getting going. Let me give you a quick recap. So we just started. We're talking about working with a buyer. And, the philosophy here is, I'm going to move that slide back for you. You're going to set up those showings. You're going to get them all confirmed. You're going to bring the listing with you. You're going to get there early. And then you're going to do this thing I call bullet number 3. You're going to point out the bad, right? You're going to point out the bad, right? What does that do? It helps you get through the home inspection, right? I mean, you want to get through that home inspection because you've thoroughly shown your client that home. You've shown them the roof, so that they know how old it is, how much life is left. Why you're doing this is because these are big ticket items. These are expensive. They eventually need to be replaced on every home, right? There's a cost of home ownership, right? Meaning, every 15, 18 years, you got to put a new roof on it. So say the roof's, $8 grand and it lasts 16 years. Well, $500 a year, you need to be putting, a new roof on. Let me just shut my phone off. Hold on. Hey, I'm doing the training, so I got to call you back. Sorry about that. All right, so that's the roof, right? So you want to, and you can go back, Dominique, and kind of look at the tape, play that first half, the AC, the electrical, the windows. You're definitely showing your client, those items. So that, and why you're doing that is so that you have the highest probability of getting through the home inspection. Deals fall apart at home inspection all the time. Hopefully they don't fall apart because the agent didn't do a good job showing the house. Here's the philosophy. Here's the thinking, right? If you can see it, it's hard to ask the listing agent or the seller for money off. If you can't see it, what are some things you might not see when you're showing that house? Rodents. Mold, termites. Even though we're going to talk a little bit about termites on the next slide, I'll move the slide, right? Those are things that, a seller has to fix because here's what's going to happen. If your buyer walks away, the next buyer is going to walk away, because the next buyer is not buying a house with termites or rats or mold, right? So let's talk a little bit about termites just real quick. Termites in Florida, yeah, I mean, whatever is there, right? Think of it like this. If you can see it, I mean, this is what I did as a listing agent. If I thought the buyer and their agent should have seen it, then there's no money off. Meaning, like, you want a credit for the roof, forget about it. That needed to be factored into your offer. Again, I have to talk to my client. I'm not just making this decision arbitrarily, but if you can see it, I don't want to hear about it. Like, you should, that's the home inspection isn't another, I call it, like, time to beat up the seller, another time to get the price reduced. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to find things that maybe nobody could have seen, and the buyer to have a better understanding of how that home works. Now, again, if there's something that the buyer couldn't have seen or their agent could have seen, and I'm the listing agent, hey, I'm open to that, right? I'll talk to my client because I know the next buyer will want it fixed. That's kind of how you got to approach this. All right, termites, right? So termites, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, meaning you'll have termites. I mean, I had to fix my AC, like I said, 10 months ago. And then 4 months after that, 6 months ago, the place has to be tented. Termites. And it had been tented 4 years prior. How did I know there were termites? I knew they were there. Anybody know what are some signs of termites? There's two types of termites in Florida. There are what are called subterranean termites. They come up through the ground. And the other ones come through the air. Anyone know what are some signs that a house might have active termite issues? Sawdust, exactly. Sawdust, I call it coffee grinds, right? Sawdust it's kind of a blend between, it looks more like coffee grinds, the color, but it has, the consistency of sawdust. That is termite poop, right? That's the termites, pooping out the wood. So if you see like a little pile of like what looks like sawdust or dry coffee grinds, that house has active termites. No, not really. Ants don't eat the wood, and ants don't poop out, the wood. So, I mean, and again, you can see ants a lot of times, right? But termites, ants aren't, going to do the damage that termites are going to do. And then the other ones are the ones that come up through the ground. Now, they make tubes. They're called mud tubes. They tunnel in, up from the ground. There you go, Dion. That is exactly right. Those are the termites flying, trying to escape the house, flying into the windows, and their wings fall off. So you look on the window sills. So when you're checking out the windows, and seeing how old they are, what condition they're in, and then you see, on the sills, translucent looking wings, the house has active termites. Now, sometimes I'll ask this question and people will say, oh, like, they'll see the actual wood eaten. That isn't indicative that there's an active termite problem now, right? There could have been termites before they ate the wood. It's been treated. If you look on the electrical panel, you'll often see a tag when, by the termite company when they were last there doing a treatment. So again, you kind of want to be on the lookout, for termites. Ceiling stains. But again, always recommend to your client to have a termite inspection. If your buyer is VA, getting a VA loan, a termite inspection is required, and it has to be submitted to the lender, and it has to pass, meaning no evidence of termites, or the house has to be treated. Ceiling stains, right? So when you're in that house, you're going to want to be looking up, stains, kills, something that's been painted over that doesn't quite match. A lot of times is an indication that they've had a leak and they've repaired it. They haven't fixed the roof, but they've repaired the leak, to maybe try to pull the wool over the buyer's eyes. Usually those are, the beginning signs. Roofs don't leak like all at once. They leak in certain areas because in that area, the roof is giving away sooner than the rest of the roof. So you want to, just take a look up. So that's kind of, what you're doing. You're looking for, potential issues that maybe that home inspector, just to mention. Now, again, it's perfectly fine to put an offer in on a house that has some ceiling stains. There's nothing wrong with it, right? There's nothing wrong with putting an offer in on a house that has an older roof or an older AC or older windows or an older electrical panel. Perfectly fine. But again, those things need to be factored into what your client is offering, because you can't expect to get anything off at home inspection. Educate your client, right? A lot of buyers think, oh, I'm buying, even though, it's an existing home, they think they're getting new construction and that seller needs to fix everything. No, that's not how it works. The house is sold as is. Certainly you're going to look at the upgrades, but your client will see those, right? Those are easy to spot, that nice new kitchen, the nice new bathrooms, all those things kind of get factored in the flow of the floor plan, right? And then you're going to, kind of try to get some feedback. What did your client like? The first time out, you don't really know what they like. You don't really know what's important. I mean, here's an example, right? It was a referral for me. I had sold a house to a young couple, and it was the wife's parents. They were from Delaware, and they were moving down here to Florida, getting a second home. And, they had a modest budget, like $200,000. And, we looked at some smaller single-family homes. This is a few years back. But the first time out, the husband had included, and we looked at some condos, but he had included some homes with one baths. Oh, no worries, Stephanie. We're just kind of getting through, kind of showing that house. Still a lot to go here. Certainly, you're going to be able to access the replay. You can catch kind of the first, 27 minutes of this, that way, but we're going to keep going at this point, right? So we're just finishing up with showing a house, it's I call it showing the bad, right? You're going to show them the roof, the AC, the electrical, right? You're pointing out and making sure your client and you can identify the big ticket items, the things that cost, a new roof, a new asphalt shingle roof, 2,000 square foot home, 10 grand. Tile roof, 15 to 17,000. New AC, 5 to 8,000. A lot of times, first-time home buyers, they're spending all their money, right, to get into the house, their down payment, their closing costs. Then they don't have a lot of free cash, and then if something goes wrong with the house, it's problematic. So if you didn't show them that, and that wasn't factored into their offer, and then the home inspector shows them, they may want to, cancel. They may want to get money off, and the listing agent may not want to do that. So we went into a lot more depth in that, but that's just kind of a quick recap for you. But you're going to get some feedback, right? We're talking about, what's really important to your client. I mean, sometimes you get lucky. I don't sell anymore. Haven't really sold a home probably coming up on a couple years. I just run the brokerage. But when I did, I remember my last two sales working with a buyer, they were both referrals. I got very lucky. I took them out one time and they made an offer. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have to take them out 5-6 times, show them 30, 40 houses. But each time is a learning experience. You're trying to find them what they want, right? So that some things are must-haves. So you want to get that feedback. So I was telling the story about, it was a referral. So I was taking out the mom and dad. The first house, the first time out, we looked at some one baths. That didn't work for the mom. So next time out, minimum 1.5 baths or 2 baths, right? So you learn, so hopefully you can zero in, right? And then you want to keep that that momentum going. Some buyers, you never know. Sometimes they're looking, but they're maybe not that serious. Other times they're like so serious, like they want to buy. It's like all consuming. They're really looking for that house. Keep the momentum going. Schedule that next time out. Have them, you went out today. Hey, let's go out on Saturday. Are you available? Yeah, I'm available. Let's do it. Let's meet at 1:00. Look online, see if you find anything. I'll do the same. Get those, requests over to me by Thursday, and I'll schedule them in. You want to keep that momentum going. If they haven't found anything and you can't show them something, they're not going to buy anything. So you want to keep at it. And eventually, most people will put an offer in. So they say, hey, let's make an offer, right? So again, not tomorrow, but on Thursday, I'm going to send everyone, I send out some handouts after the training. One is an appraiser. It's a grid that an appraiser put together. It's quite good. So it shows what's a pool worth at a $200,000 house, a $250,000, and it kind of, right, and it goes down, the price on the top and then the features down the side, because things are worth different amounts at different price points. So it helps you, comp out a house. Comping out a house, it's an art. It's not a science. It's what you're really doing is you're trying to justify, okay, because if your buyer is getting financed, sometimes there's an appraisal contingency, right? And you want the house to appraise, or at least feel as good as possible about it, or sometimes, you might say, gee, it's still a seller's market out there. It's hard, especially at certain price points, the lower price points, it's hard to find homes for buyers. They go very, very quickly. So you want to comp that out. You want to make sure it's worth it. All right, so what are you looking for? You're looking for close to the house you're putting an offer in, meaning the closer to that house geographically, the better comp it is. So one of the nice things about the MLS is there's a map function, right? So you can sort, the sold listings, and you're always looking for sold. You're not looking for active. Actives don't matter, because think of it like this. If all the sellers, with active listings overpriced their homes and you comped it off of those, well, you're going to get some bad data. So you want to look at sold, right? Close and sold. Something that sold today, closed today, probably went under agreement a month ago, is a better comp than something that sold 6 months ago, right? Because it's now as opposed to 6 months ago. Sometimes there are no comps now, right? So you're just trying to find close and recent, right? Those are your better comps. Then you're going to do your pluses and minuses, right? To make everything's apples to apples. And these are very general. That handout I'm going to send everybody is much, much more specific. So that'll be more helpful for you. Here's more, kind of for discussion, right? So a garage, at $250,000, is worth $25,000. So if the house you are putting an offer in on has a garage, but the comp you're looking at, no garage, you have to add $25,000 to it. Pool, again, on a $250,000 home, is worth about $25,000, right? So again, the house, that you're using as your comp has a pool. There you're subtracting, right? Third bedrooms are worth more than 4 bedrooms, right? That third bedroom is valuable. Why? Much more demand for 3-bedroom homes than 2 bedrooms. 2-bedroom homes still sell, trust me. But that third bedroom is valuable because there's more people want 3 bedrooms, especially younger couples. Or if they have a boy and a girl, they have to have 3 bedrooms. Or if they have, and they're thinking of starting a family and they only have, a boy, and then they say, gee, we want to have a girl, and they're in a 2-bedroom home, that's a problem. If you have 3 kids, 2 boys can share 1 bedroom and the girl can, have her own bedroom. That still works, right? And then the last one is the square footage adjustment. A lot of times, agents say, oh, they look at, okay, the price per square foot, that's a number that's on every listing. What it's active, sold, pending, right? They divide, the price by the number of square feet. Well, the additional square feet or the less square feet, you only give 30 to 40% credit there, right? Because there's the land, the roof, there's a lot of things with that house that has to be there no matter how many square feet. So you don't get full value, for those extra square feet, meaning if the house is 2,000 square feet and it's sold for 300,000, it's $150 a square foot. Now this house is 2,200 square feet. It's not worth $30,000 more. It's worth $9,000 to $15,000 more, generally speaking. This is, again, it's subjective. Even for appraisers, it's subjective. I had one once. Listing is $279. The appraisal comes back at $249. He was a 20% down buyer. He goes, "What can I do?" I'm like, "Apply with my lender." Not that had anything to do with it. So when it's conventional, he was conventional. You can apply with another lender, which he did. Literally 2 weeks later, the next appraiser, $289, $40,000 difference. An appraisal is just one person's opinion. That doesn't mean that's what the house is worth. Obviously, in that example, that's a true story. Two different appraisers, two very different. So again, we're not appraisers, but what we're trying to do is make sure that our client isn't overpaying, that we have a good feeling, as good as we can ever, that house is going to appraise out. Everybody good with that? Again, I'm going to send out that handout. The more you do, in terms of comping, kind of the better you get at it. All right, let's move in. You did the comps. They say, hey, let's write up the offer. So let's talk a little bit about the contract. Now, if you go on the Join Dalton Wade website under the training tab, there is actually a complete filled out, all the addendums, all the attachments, contract, all done. Take a look. It is something, I guess I say, fill in the blanks and check the boxes. That's what it is, right? They've made it that simple for us. I've also written a blog article on what you need from your client in terms of, how much are they offering? What is their deposit? When do they want to close? Things of that nature that help you put that offer together. Now in Florida, there's two types of contracts. There's the as-is contract, which is used in 98% of the occasions, 98% of the transactions. And then there's the other contract, which is called the residential contract for purchase and sale. The main difference is around the inspection. So with the as-is contract, the buyer can walk away for any reason. They don't need a reason. They don't need to do a home inspection. They can get out of that contract within that inspection period and get their deposit back. Don't even have to do an inspection. I mentioned last night about, I'll get a call from one of my agents. Hey, I want to put two contracts in on two different houses. The buyer does. Two contracts, two different houses. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. You can do that because one they can cancel and the other they can move forward with. But usually it's the as-is contract. The as-is contract, the buyer can walk away, but the seller does not have to repair anything. They can, but they don't have to. They can say no, and that can kill the deal. Next is the offer amount. How much are they offering? It's based on the comps. Next comes the good faith deposit amount. How much are they putting down? Please do not get confused between what they're putting in escrow and what they're putting down for their loan. They have nothing to do with each other. I've seen agents screw that up and put way too much money in escrow. One time up north, I had an agent put $60,000 in escrow because she thought the deposit, it was a $300,000 condo. He was 20% down, 60 grand she put in escrow. Unbelievable. She worked at a big brokerage. She had no idea what she was doing. So again, when you work with a buyer, True story. I've seen it more than once, Ernesto. In fact, I've seen it several times. When you work with a buyer, you want to put down as little as possible in case there's an issue. Something doesn't go right. The seller makes a claim on that deposit, right? Last night we talked about, working with a seller. When you work with a seller, you want a big deposit, right? Because the buyer can walk away from you, and really, more than likely, all you get is that deposit. If you're a listing agent, don't be accepting $1,000. It's nothing. What if they find a better house a day before closing? They like that house much better. They'll walk away. Harder to walk away if you have $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in escrow. So when you work with a seller, big escrow deposit. When you work with a buyer, as little as possible. Try to go in with that offer with $1,000. Maybe, again, there's a lot of inexperienced, part-time, not good listing agents. They may accept that offer. They may not even advise their client that they shouldn't do that. They didn't take my training. Great question, Johnny. Great question. Here's, and I actually do a training. It's about a half-hour training on the difference between the two. So that's a really good question. So here's the thing. When you, as the listing agent, so the listing agent can request the residential contract. Why you would do that is, there are no issues with that house. That the odds, like that home inspection, like maybe you've already had them do a home inspection, but that house is just about perfect, and that buyer's finding nothing. So that protects your client from them walking away, because they could walk away for any reason. Maybe they found a better house. Maybe they put an offer in on yours. Maybe that was my agent that called me and said, hey, I want to put 2 offers in on 2 different houses, and they put one in on yours, and they used the as is, and they walked away on you. But if you use the residential purchase, it's harder. If not, they can't walk away. Then they lose their deposit. I mean, just the residential purchase contract up front, the buyer and seller have agreed how much the seller is going to spend to fix what are called general repairs, termites, and permits. Expired permits, open permits, unpermitted stuff. So there's a percentage, for each of those categories. Typically, the default is 1.5%. So if the house is $300,000, the seller is agreeing to spend $4,500 on each of those 3 categories. So if there are no issues, then it's smart. They can't walk away on you. It gets a little cumbersome, because if there are issues and the seller doesn't agree with the buyer's home inspection, then the seller gets to do a home inspection that they pay for, and then there's a third home inspection. So there's some mechanical issues that make it harder, but that's when you would use it. Does that answer your question, Johnny? All right, we'll keep going and see if he types in, but that is the answer. All right, so as little as possible with the deposit. Then comes the next line, which is the financing amount. So perfect, thank you, Johnny. So again, VA 100% financing, FHA 96% financing, conventional 5, 10, 15, 20% or more down. Sometimes there's even some 3% programs out there. The offer acceptance date, right? So you're going to make that you're going to give that seller 24 hours, unless it's bank owned. Then you got to give them maybe a week because they're slower. But a regular sale, 24 hours. Because last night we talked about when you're the listing agent, you get that contract coming in, right? You're going to go try to find another offer so you can make it highest and best and hopefully drive up that price. Here, you want the seller to respond quickly. The closing date, hopefully you're going to have spoken to their lender. You need to speak to their lender. If they can't close in 30 days, probably find a new lender. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But again, you want to make sure that the lender can deliver on the closing date. You don't want to ask, for extensions, because they don't have to give them to you. Smart listing agents get backup offers. Maybe that backup offer is higher than yours, or maybe that backup offer is the same price or a little bit lower, but it's cash and your buyer's getting a loan and the lender can't deliver. Having a good lender is key. When the lender your buyer is using, you do not know them, you have lost control of your transaction. Now, it may work out fine, may be good, that lender may do a great job, but I hear the horror stories every day of bad lenders that don't get it done. I just had an agent, lose a listing because the seller's mad at him, really for no good reason, but the buyer strung them along and can't close through a large bank. Avoid the large banks. They're problematic. They are not helpful. You want a lender, and again, you can't always use your lender, right? But if you can, not at all, Dion. Not at all. Try calling Quicken. Try calling Rocket Mortgage and getting somebody to speak to you. They're the worst. I mean, they're right up there. No, I have not had any good experience with them. I mean, really, to me, the online lender is Quicken, right? I mean, you're calling them up. Yeah, well, that's who's out there. I mean, again, once you've been through the disasters, once they've caused you to lose your commission. Now, again, I don't know. I mean, that's just my experience. There you go. Yeah, because they don't answer. You don't have that relationship. They're too big. They don't. USAA is another one we see. I mean, we're doing. Here at Dalton Wade, we do 250 closings a month. We hear this, the agents call when there's problems. Thank you, Ernesto. We have a relationship with a lender. They close on time every time. Every time. Again, just to kind of mention, I mean, one of the things that I'm gonna go off track a little bit here, but it's important. As real estate agents, I mean, our job, I mean, we have knowledge, right? We have experience. But one thing you have to be careful of is telling your client what to do. I'm going to give you an example. You're negotiating. You're the buyer's agent. The seller's at $300,000 and your client's at $290,000. Now, if I'm in that situation, this is what I say. I say, hey, let's split the difference. I love splitting the difference, meeting in the middle. I find that to be very effective. When the buyer or seller feels that they've given too much one way or the other, it tends to be harder to get that transaction done. Like they feel like the buyer stole from them or the seller, wasn't reasonable. Then they do the home inspection. Some stuff comes up and they're like, forget them. I'm out of here. I'm not buying that house. I don't like them. It doesn't even become about the house. It becomes personal, right? I've had deals blow up over $500. Crazy. It wasn't about the money. It was because the buyer didn't like the seller anymore. Trust me, this happens all the time. So, hey, let's meet in the middle. And I'm working with the buyer, and the buyer says to me, okay, I'm going to talk with my wife. We're going to talk. We'll let you know in the morning. And they go home and they talk and they say, Phil, all he wants is his commission. All he wants is commission. He doesn't care. We're spending $5,000 more. I'm not doing it. All he wants is his commission. He doesn't care about me. He's one of those pushy real estate agents that I hate. That's not good. Not good. So what I learned is this is what you say. Hey, let's meet in the middle. I'll see if I, we'll come up 5,000. I'll see if I can get the seller to come up 5,000, down 5,000. We'll meet in the middle at 295. But it is up to you. The last thing out of my mouth, whenever I'm telling my client to do something, but it's up to you. I've given them my professional opinion. Let's meet in the middle. That's effective. Both parties agree to give the same. We're meeting in the middle, but it's up to you. Same thing with a lender. If my buyer comes pre-approved, my worst, and this is I keep tab of this. Right now I am 0 for 14. 0 for 14 with Bank of America. 14 transactions, either myself or my agents have done with that place. Not one time did they ever close on time. Never. Not once. Never. Had deals blow up with them, pre-approved, didn't get the loan, never closed on time. And sometimes it was like a month late. And my buyer comes in, a new buyer, and I'm asking, hey, are you pre-approved? And they show me their pre-approval. They say, yes, I am. I went into the branch of Bank of America. I'm approved by Bank of America. And I'm like, oh, no. And I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them my 0 for 14 story. And then I'm going to tell them, but it's up to you. If you want to work with them, I told you they don't close on time. It potentially can be problematic for us. But it's up to you. No matter what it is, the lender, the negotiation, whenever you're telling your client to do something, it's their decision. Our job as an agent is to present the facts, to give them our professional opinion, our advice. And then it's up to them to decide what they want to do. All right, so let's move on to it's just an important concept, because again, this is all about referrals, past clients. We want to do a great job, and that's how you do a good job. We're professionals. We help our clients, but it's their decision. We're not like, oh, come up 5,000. I had an agent, it's unbelievable. Wasn't my agent. She picked up the pieces from another agent. They did the home inspection. There were like 4 or 5 things the buyer wanted done. And the agent said, that's ridiculous. Those are trivial. Let's get going. He didn't buy the house and he dumped the agent. Like, can you believe that's what's out there? Like, we are not used car salesmen at all. And if you want to go that route, you will have a harder time succeeding. All right, section 7 is cannot assign the contract. So assignability, do you ever see these TV commercials or radio ads? Let me teach you how to, invest in real estate and make money without any money. Well, how you do it is by assigning the contract. So you get somebody and these are flippers, investors, wholesalers. They buy at wholesale, they sell at retail. They're out there, they tend to be more distressed properties, lower priced properties. Not always, but they tie a property up. And then in the contract, they're allowed to assign that contract to another buyer at a higher price. That's why they would do it. And then they do what's called a simultaneous close. So they had the house under contract for $200, and they found a buyer for $215, and they closed, and they made $15,000 without ever having to invest any money. However, most first-time home buyers, you're going to check cannot assign contract. If you're the listing agent and you see a contract coming in where they want to assign it, be wary, especially if they're putting down a small down payment. They'll probably never close if they can't find somebody to take that contract. All right, the financing. This is very important. This is an area where agents mess up too often, I'm sad to say. I go through this. I do a specific training on this. This is something you need to understand. This has to do with your buyer's financing, right? Your buyer, you're going to check, so there's 2 ways to purchase a home, right? There's cash, right? You check the box cash, that's simple. Or financing. Now, financing, the seller is letting your buyer obtain a mortgage. If they don't obtain the mortgage in the financing contingency period, which is 30 days, your buyer gets their deposit back. But the problem is this. The problem is when, and again, we'll go back to Bank of America, right? Where, they haven't been able to deliver on time. Then what happens is, okay, now you're in not a great place because the loan hasn't been approved. So you have a few choices that you have to talk with your client about. Here's where we are. You're not completely underwritten. We're not 100% sure you're going to get the loan. So we have a few choices to make. We can cancel. We can cancel the contract today, right? And we get our deposit back. We can ask the seller for an extension of the financing period. So our deposit is still protected if you don't get the loan. Or we can go without the financing contingency, and if you can't get the loan, more than likely you're not going to get your deposit back. What do you want to do, Mr. Buyer? He's going to tell you to try to get an extension on the financing. Most sellers won't give you that. A lot won't. Then you have to decide, okay, do we want to continue with our deposit at risk, or do we want to cancel? The problem is when the agent doesn't advise their client about this, and then they don't get the loan, and then it's a surprise to their client that they're not getting their deposit back. There should be no surprise. I mean, I remember, I've been practicing in Florida for a little over 4 years. And in the beginning, I was out there selling myself, and I'll never forget, I was the listing agent on a condo, and the financing contingency came and went, and the other listing agent or the buyer's agent never contacted me because she didn't know what she was doing. Quite honestly, didn't know what she was doing. She didn't understand this concept. I see agents mess this up all the time. I'm sad to say, I had one of my agents mess this up this past week. Meaning she didn't cancel the contract, right? You got to tell the listing agent you're canceling, you're out. They're not getting, they don't want to proceed. They're not done. They're not underwritten, or they're not underwritten, but they're still moving forward, hoping to close. So this agent, back to my story, so then she says, we need an extension. I'm like, what do you mean you need an extension? Yeah, we can't close. Well, and she had put $10,000 in escrow. And I'm like, well, we don't have to give you an extension. Your client's going to lose her deposit. Your client's losing their deposit. We're keeping their deposit. What do you mean? Nobody's ever done this to me. She didn't understand that she had to ask. Now, again, it closed, thank goodness. But if it didn't close and that buyer didn't get that loan, they're out their deposit. She fell asleep. Very important. All right, next, seller selects the title company. So that's typical. Now, if you're in, Sarasota, Manatee, Broward, Dade counties, oftentimes the buyer in those counties, for whatever reason, picks the title company. So depending where you are, determines what's customary. Most places in Florida, it's customary for the seller to select the title company. When the seller selects the title company, they pay the buyer's title insurance policy. When the buyer selects the title company, the buyer pays that themselves. The next section is seller to pay assessments in full. That has to do with, there's an assessment on the property. What's a potential assessment? The county paved the road, put a new road in, put sewers in. It's a condominium and they put new windows in, and they're letting people pay it off over time. There's a lien on that property. There was an improvement made and it caused a lien to be there. Now there's two ways that can go. One way, the seller pays it off at closing. That's what you always want to put in there as the buyer's agent. Or the other way is the buyer assumes that assessment and pays it off on its schedule. So that's a cost that goes to the buyer. Home warranty. Again, sometimes you want to check, the box, for home warranty. Hold on, my phone is ringing. 1 second. Sorry about that. All right, so that's the home warranty. That needs to be filled out. Let's move on to the inspection period. So the inspection period is similar to the financing, right? It's a contingency. Your buyer has, again, the as-is contract. If it's left blank, it's 15 days. They have 15 days to basically decide if they're moving forward or not. Sometimes they're asking the seller for repairs or credit, right? And that's still being negotiated. Only the buyer can cancel the contract. Let me say that again. Only the buyer can cancel the contract. The seller cannot cancel. However, if the buyer and seller have not agreed on the inspection repairs or credits, you have to send the listing agent an email that basically says, we need $1,500 off and a new electrical box put in. And if we don't receive that, we're canceling the contract. That would be written up in an addendum that both parties would sign. However, it's not signed. And now the inspection contingency is ending. So now there is no more inspection contingency. Your buyer, if they decide not to move forward, doesn't get their deposit back. But by sending that email, you've protected their deposit, right? So then the next day you continue to negotiate. They agree, all is good. The next day they don't agree, the deal falls apart, your buyer gets their deposit back. But if you do not send them that notification that the buyer is canceling that contract, those are the words you need to use, canceling the contract. You can send over a cancellation and release, but you're still negotiating. You want it to come together, but you've protected your buyer's deposit. So there are two places where you protect your buyer's deposit: the financing contingency and the home inspection contingency. All right, let's move on. Section 19 has to do with the addendums. So the inspection period is section 12, and then between section 12 and section 19 on the end is a bunch of boilerplate. We don't fill anything out, but it's there, right? It tells some different things. Again, when I do a training on just the contract, and I go through all those sections, but here, we don't have enough time, so we're going to just go through the important stuff. So we're on to section 19. So section 19 has to do with the condominium rider. It has to do with the FHA VA addendum. So if your buyer's FHA VA, there's a special addendum. If you're buying in an HOA association, there's an HOA addendum. If the house is before 1978, there's a lead paint addendum. If your buyer is selling their house, there might be a home sale contingency addendum. Those addendums need to be part of the contract. Both parties need to sign them. Let's talk about VA FHA. That is a special type of financing. Very common, very common. Many buyers, due to their credit and amount that they can put down, go for VA. VA, if you're a service member and you're able to get your VA certificate, that's awesome. You put no money down. I mean, it's great. It's a great, perk, and rightfully so, for being part of the military. FHA VA, there's an automatic appraisal contingency. Meaning if the house doesn't appraise, the buyer can walk away and get their deposit back. It's built into that addendum. They could still negotiate, or maybe the buyer, lenders lend at the lesser of the purchase price or the appraised amount. So say they're buying a $300,000 home and it only appraises out at $290,000. That VA buyer can still buy it, but they now have to come up with $10,000 out of their pocket because the lender's only going to lend them $290,000. They may not want to do that. Again, oftentimes buyers think like, oh, it appraised at $290,000. That's not what it's worth. That's what it's worth. Remember my story. I can give you multiple situations, examples where same house in a very less than a month, dramatic differences in what the appraiser appraised the houses for. VA FHA, automatic appraisal contingency. FHA VA, that appraisal sticks with that house for 6 months. So you can't, if you have FHA VA, you can't go to another lender and reapply. You can do that with conventional and get another appraisal. That works. FHA VA, not possible because the appraisal sticks with the house for 6 months. The other thing about FHA VA, there's a section where the seller agrees to fix repairs. FHA VA, it's not a home inspection, but the FHA VA appraiser is going to do an inspection of the house for its condition. The roof has to have more than 3 years of life left. No, cracked flooring, broken windows, wood rot, chipped paint. If they call any of those things out in their appraisal report, they have to be fixed. The appraiser has to come back out and inspect that they were fixed. I just had an agent. I think it's one of her first deals. She's doing a VA deal. There's a section in there where you can, ask, the seller to up to $1,000. They agree up front. If anything gets called out, they'll fix. So I asked her, like, what's the condition of the house? She said, it's perfect. I said, put 0 in there because they're not going to find anything. If you have a house that's a little shaky in terms of its condition, you may put some dollars in there. It's on the FHA VA addendum. Let's talk one last thing about FHA VA. FHA VA, no condos. For 99% of the condos in Florida, you cannot do FHA or VA financing. They've loosened the FHA rules just a little bit, but not enough. There's very, very, very few, guys. So if you're out there showing your client, you've got an FHA VA buyer and you're showing them condos, you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time. They can't get that done. It's not going to happen. Now, what you can sell them is a townhouse or a villa. And the main difference between a townhouse and a villa and a condo is that in a townhouse and a villa, the buyer owns the land underneath the structure. In a condominium, the condo association owns the land. And that's problematic for FHA VA. You don't want to be showing your clients stuff they can't buy. We'll talk a little bit about conventional. So conventional financing, no appraisal contingency. There is not an appraisal contingency built in, meaning if the house doesn't appraise and they're conventional financing and they have the money, they have to buy the house. I mean, they don't have to buy it, but they don't get their deposit back. Let me run you that example again. You have a 20% down buyer, $300,000 home. The house appraises at $290,000. The bank, the mortgage company, is now going to lend 80% of $290,000 as opposed to 80% of $300,000. So your buyer needs to come up with $8,000. That's why the comps are important. Now, sometimes you can get an appraisal contingency inserted into the deal with conventional. If I'm the listing agent, I'm not accepting it, or I'm telling my client we don't want to accept that. That is not in our best interest. Why? Because I just gave you 2 examples where the house didn't appraise out, and then it appraised out with the next appraiser. So again, very buyer favorable, not seller favorable. Appraisal contingency. So appraisal contingency, meaning if it doesn't appraise out by the appraiser, in FHA, VA, the buyer can walk away potentially. Conventional, not as much. Condos, let's talk about condos. Condos are very, very tricky. I just mentioned no FHA, no VA on condos. Condos are tough, right? You need to know this. There's 4 tests. This is for conventional financing. 5, 10, 15, 20% down. Again, if you're the listing agent, again, this is one of my agents, and, I don't know whether she missed this training, but, she sold a condo or put it under agreement, and one owner owned like 60% of the units. It flunked. If one person owns more than 10% of the units, no 5, 10, 15, or 20% down conventional. Why is that? It's because the lender is afraid that one person's going to stop paying their condo fees. The condos are going to go into disrepair, and now their collateral isn't worth as much. Here are the other 3 tests. There has to be a budget. You have to provide the lender with a budget that shows 10% of the condo fees. So the condo association's collecting $1 million. 10% of that, $100,000, goes into reserves. If that doesn't meet that test, can't get 5, 10, 15, 20% financing. %15 or more of the condo owners are delinquent on their condo fees. They ask the management company. There's a questionnaire that the lender gives to the management company, and if those questions get answered, yes on 15% or more delinquent, no 5, 10, 15, 20% financing. And then the last question is litigation. Any litigation against the condo association can't get financed at that level. Now somebody can put down 25, 30 or more, right? Then the only question is the litigation. If there's litigation against the condo association, there is no conventional financing. However, you can still get like a credit union or a private lender. If you ever run into issues with condo financing, I've got some good resources for some, maybe non-conventional type of products. Again, you want to just, understand the finance, because your deal won't go through. Condos are tricky. I do, again, a whole training just on financing for condos, making sure we understand that. All right, closing cost credit. Let's talk about that. You've got an FHA buyer, right? They are buying a $200,000 property, so that's $7,000 that they need for their down payment. And then the closing costs are estimated at $10,000. That's $17,000. They only have $12,000. How can they? And they're pre-approved. How can they buy that property? Anybody know? They need $17,000, but they only have $12,000. How can they buy that property? Who knows? What would you do in that situation? Obviously, you're going to ask the lender, but no, that is not right, Ernesto. No. Anybody know? Nope, you don't put it on top of the price. Nope, you don't buy points. That is not going to help you either. Got a couple people typing. We'll wait a second here. It's closing costs and what they have to pay. Between their closing costs and the 3.5%, that is $17,000, and they only have $12,000. How are you going to get them that house? Why are they pre-approved? Fiedler's typing. See if he gets it. Then I'm going to tell you. There you go. Thank you, Fiedler. Good job. Awesome. You're going to ask the seller to pay part of the buyer's closing costs. It's called the closing cost credit, closing concession, finance closing. Every lender, Johnny, every lender allows that. So here's here's the thing. On FHA, VA, it's 6%. Well, down payment assistance programs, try to stay away from those. Those. I mean, if you got to do it, you got to do it. Thank you, Derek. Seller contribution, much easier. Just had another transaction, fall apart after like 3 months. We're the listing agent, where the buyer's trying to get down payment assistance in Orange County, and it just was taking too long. The seller gave up on them. Yep, fine closing. Because they're brutal, Ernesto. They're hard to get done. They are there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and there's no assurance. I mean, they take longer. And they tend to be lower end. They tend to be people with more issues around their financing. There you go. Thank you, Derek. They are definitely the worst case. Exactly. Again, I mean, it is what it is, but they're tougher. They're very thorough. But the closing cost credit works. You just type in, in the additional terms, seller to pay $5,000 of buyer's closing costs, prepaids, and well, that's great. I mean, good job. Maybe I only hear the bad, which is probably the case. So, that's the closing cost credit. Phone ringing again. Let me shut that off. Hold on. All right, so that's closing cost credit. So that's the contract. We talked about some other things, FHA, VA, the addendums, condos. So again, I mean, they're stumbling blocks that, we want to make sure you're aware of, so you don't fall into those. Like, you're not showing your FHA, VA buyers condos. It's not going to happen. You're not, you're making sure if you're putting an offer in on a condominium, that it's going to qualify. Right? You understand the financing contingency, the inspection contingency, right? These are areas where as newer agents, you can, I don't want to say you can mess up, right? We don't want to mess up. We want to be doing a great job. All right, onward. All right, the home inspection. Let's talk about that, right? I mean, so again, I just read an article, it's a few months ago, about one of my agents sent me about, like, should you go to the home inspection or not? I went to now, as the listing agent, I never went to the home inspection because it's a waste of time, right? But as the buyer's agent, I went to every home inspection. I am there. I may be on the phone a lot. I may be doing some other work. A good home inspector will do a recap at the end, but I want to understand if there's any issues so I can communicate that and talk intelligently with the other side. All right. And then sometimes there's things to negotiate coming out of the home inspection, right? You're going to have to negotiate those items. Bullet 3 here is an important one. Closing credit better than repairs. All right. Let's kind of recap. So a lot of buyers want repairs because they think, like, have the seller fix it. I don't want to fix it. I don't want to deal with it. Have them fix it. They think they're buying a new house and it should be fixed, whatever it is. We talked about the 4-point. So, right, if something comes out of the 4-point inspection, it has to be fixed in order for your buyer to get insurance. We talked about FHA, VA, right? That appraiser, not the home inspector, but the FHA, VA appraiser, the person appraising the property, may come out, and through that appraisal, he may note things in his report that have to be fixed prior to closing. They have to be done. Now, if you're not dealing with those two areas of repairs, stay away from repairs. Why? You've increased the probability of problems. That's not what I thought. I didn't think the seller was going to repair it like that. Look how cheap he did that work. Oh, I thought he was going to fix this and he fixed that. That's not what I thought. That's not what I wanted. That guy's been a jerk. Those sellers, I don't like them. They're terrible. I'm not buying this house. These are true stories that I've seen happen numerous times because the agent put a repair addendum in there. What you do is you tell your client, hey, look, if we have the seller, again, 4-point has to be fixed. FHA, VA financing, and that appraiser calls something out, has to be fixed. Your buyer wants repairs. Other than that, you tell them, at least suggest them, hey, look, sometimes the sellers, they don't care. They do the work as cheaply as possible. You always want to ask for a licensed professional, and you want, copies of the receipts. Sometimes, they have their brother fix the thing who's, a fly-by-night electrician, and they don't do a good job. And then your buyer's upset, and he's threatening not to close, and you caused that problem by setting up that repair addendum. Say to your buyer, hey, look, let me get you a credit. Explain to them what can go wrong. The seller might not do the work all that well. There may be confusion as to what the work exactly is. If it's a credit, a closing cost credit, your buyer is going to have $2,000 more because the seller paid $2,000 of their closing costs. So they can take that $2,000 and fix it the way they want. Safer, less stress. Everybody good with that concept? All right, let's talk about the key dates. Key dates. The escrow deposit. The escrow deposit has to be there in 3 days. So if a contract goes in today is day 0, right? Today is day 0. So you start counting from today. Tomorrow, Wednesday, day 1, Thursday, day 2, Friday, day 3. That deposit has to be there on the 3rd day. Loan application, 5 days. Wednesday, day 1, Thursday, day 2, Friday, Saturday, Sunday's day 5, Sunday's day 5. So if the last day ends on a Saturday or Sunday, you get to the following Monday. If the last day ends on a holiday, Columbus Day is this weekend, right? Monday's Columbus Day. If that contingency expires on Saturday, you get to Tuesday. Inspection contingency, same thing, except you count all the days, both the business days and the weekend days. It's only when it ends on a Saturday or Sunday you get to Monday. If it ends on a holiday, you get to the next day. You need to know your dates. You need to know what day 0 is. That's the date. That's the effective date of the contract. You might shoot an email to the listing agent. Hey, please confirm that today is the effective date on this transaction. That way everybody is on the same page, no confusion. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Dalton Wade buyer acknowledgement. If you're at another brokerage, or you brokerage should have something like this. It's very, very important. It tells the buyer how you're working with them, what you're responsible for and what they're responsible for. It tells them we're functioning as a transaction broker. It tells them here are some examples. They may see on the MLS the property taxes are $2,000. Then they buy the house, and then shortly thereafter there's a reassessment, and now the property taxes are $5,000. They might be very, very upset with that and upset with you. It's really a cover our butt type of document, but it outlines everything that we're responsible for and the buyer is responsible for. I mean, it's helped us out numerous times. People like to blame real estate agents. Oh, it's your fault. I had a client, not myself, but an agent. She called me up. She said, hey, I have an issue. I'm like, what's up? She goes, oh, I sold a house in an HOA, and the son lives there, and he has a truck, and you can't have a truck in this HOA. and he's threatening to sue us. And he had to go buy an SUV, and it cost him $8,000. He traded in his truck, and he loves his truck, and now he wants, the real estate agents to pay. I'm like, Jill, did he sign the buyer's Dalton Wade buyer? Yeah. Well, right in there it says, that you as the buyer have read the HOA documents, and the HOA documents clearly state that you can't have a truck. Tell them to have a nice day. We're sorry they didn't read what they signed. One other thing I want to mention, wire fraud. Yeah, I can send this to you, Kel. No worries. I will get that to you in the morning. I will definitely do that. Not an issue. How are you, by the way? Thank you for being here. Let's talk a little bit about wire fraud. Wire fraud. So we, at the top of the Dalton Wade buyer acknowledgement is wire fraud. We have them sign a second document acknowledging that we've advised them to be on the lookout for wire fraud. Wire fraud is nasty. Wire fraud is out there. We've had probably 5 or 6 buyers that were potentially going to send their deposit or their closing costs money to criminals. But because we had that wire fraud disclosure, they were alerted to it. These criminals are slick. If you're at a brokerage and they don't have anything on wire fraud, use this. Talk to your client. Talk to them about this. I mean, there's nothing worse than being ripped off. And it can be for a lot of money. Think if you had a cash buyer and they're wiring, $450,000 and they wire to criminals. Wow. Make sure you give them that buyer's disclosure and you talk to them about wire fraud. It's in .loop. All right, the final walkthrough. We're just about done. The final walkthrough. Okay. You always want to do the final walkthrough with your client. What is the final walkthrough? The final walkthrough is like the morning of closing or the night before closing. You're going to go to the house with your client, and you're going to make sure that house is ready to be turned over to them, that the AC works, the appliances work. There hasn't been any damage. There's only been normal wear and tear. And then you're going to ask them to sign a document that says they've done the final walkthrough. This is Realtor 101. When realtors don't do this, lazy. They're lazy. It takes, a half hour. I had one of my agents we're reviewing her file, and we're like, where's the final walkthrough? And she said, it was my friend. It was my friend. That was her. What do you mean it's your friend? Because it's your friend, you should have gone and done that final walkthrough 10 times. Are you kidding me? She didn't get it. If that AC had broken and she closed, that person isn't her friend anymore. She's buying her a new AC. I had another agent, he didn't do the final walkthrough, and his client was out of town. All he had to do was go there. And he calls me up, and he kind of is holding his, tail between his legs. And he said, hey, the seller was supposed to remove a lot of debris. They removed some of it, but still a lot of it's there. What am I going to do? What should I do? I go, you didn't do the final walkthrough? He says, no. This is what you're going to do. You're going to call up the listing agent, and you're going to see if the seller is going to do what they said, and they're going to get that stuff out of there. And then if they don't, you're going to hire a truck, 1-800-JUNK, and you're going to reach into your pocket, and you're going to take some of your commission money, and you're going to make it right for your client. Now, all he had to do was go to the house. And if it wasn't cleaned out the way it should have been, then there can be a holdback. The title company can hold money back. The seller doesn't get all their proceeds. Maybe, to get that stuff out of there was $500, and then The addendum is written up that, the seller has 30 days to get the debris out. If they don't, the $500 goes to the buyer. And then the buyer has the money to pay somebody to get it out. Simple stuff. Realtor 101. Final walkthrough. Always do it. All right. You're closing. You did a great job. You showed them a lot of houses. You thought they were never going to put an offer in, but they did. You negotiated it. You told them it was up to them, right? And you went under agreement and you got them through the home inspection and they got financed and they're ready to close. And you did a great job. They are happy with you. They can't believe you're awesome. Ask them to review you on Zillow or Realtor.com or maybe Yelp. Usually one site. Pick one site, right? We're going to talk tomorrow night about making sure all your, I call them social media accounts, but Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, Homes.com, your profiles, your photo, your bio are all on those sites. And then pick one. I like Zillow. Pick Zillow and start building up your reviews. People look at those. And then mention to them, hey, can you refer me? Be upfront. Tell them that's how realtors build their business. And, they were happy with you. Can they tell a family member or, somebody they know if they hear about anybody looking? Can they send them your way? It works. I mean, I had, that one young couple I mentioned, then I got their parents. I also got the husband's parents. And then from, the wife's parents, I got another referral. So that one transaction gave me 3 more deals. That's how you build your business. It goes back to doing a great job for people. All right, guys, we covered an awful lot of information tonight. Probably too much to digest in one session. You'll have access to the replay. Check it out. If you ever have any questions, and can always contact me. Here to help. Any last questions before we call it a night? Thank you, Maureen. Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. All right, guys. Thank you. See if there's any last questions before we say goodnight. Fiedler, Ernesto, thank you so much. Dion, thank you. Johnny, awesome. Thank you so much. Stephanie, Derek, awesome. Good stuff. Shanitha, thank you. Naomi, thank you so much. All right, guys, don't forget tomorrow night we have, we'll talk about the office policies and procedures, RESPA, seller's disclosure, lead paint, antitrust, agency, fair housing. There's some good topics. It's a good conversation. It's a little bit shorter than, tonight. So if you haven't signed up, sign up for that one. You'll get a lot out of it. Awesome. All right, guys, have a great evening. Thank you.